This week in the Enterprise Security News, we discuss how GitHub Code Scanning aims to prevent vulnerabilities in open source software. The question is it enough? SlashNext integrates with Palo Alto Network's Cortex XSOAR to deliver a whole bunch of other buzzwords. Portshift announces extended Kubernetes cluster protection. Vigilant Ops Insight platform generates device software bill of materials. All that and more in the news section. In the second segment, George Belafonte, I think I said that completely wrong. He's the manager of vulnerability management for Toyota Financial. He's going to discuss vulnerability management and the approaches they take there using Qualys' VMDR solution. In the final segment, we welcome Sid Nanda. He's the senior product marketing manager at Viavi Solutions. We're going to talk about using the network to reduce remediation costs. Stay tuned for all that and more on this episode of Enterprise Security Weekly. This is Security Weekly, for security professionals, by security professionals. Broadcasting live from G-Unit Studios in Rhode Island, it's the show where we talk security vendors and aren't afraid to name names. It's Enterprise Security Weekly. The Viavi Solutions Observer Platform provides SecOps teams a powerful combination of comprehensive data for threat hunting and incident response that includes wire data analytics and enriched flow records. Using pure, unaltered packet and net flow, Observer presents views across the entire IT infrastructure with threat alert features including scope, impact, and advanced traffic profiling. Teams can use automated workflows to dive into high-fidelity network evidence and more quickly resolve issues, minimizing impact on customers, users, and business operations. Learn more about the Viavi Network Security Solution and download free resources at securityweekly.com/Viavi. That's VIAVI. You want to get the right things done for your security program. Sounds simple, but what are the right things for you? What does done mean? And how are you going to get there? Rapid7 realizes more than anyone how hard this can be. While Rapid7's Insight platform offers you industry-leading vulnerability management and detection and response solutions, their focus is on understanding where you are so that they can help you get where you're going. Visit securityweekly.com/Rapid7 to get started. Welcome to episode 183 of Enterprise Security Weekly for May 13th, 2020. I'm your host, Paul Asadorian, joined by Mr. Matt Alderman remotely. Well, welcome, Matt.
Hey, Paul. Good afternoon.
Mr. John Strand is here as well. John, welcome.
2 for 2. 2 for 2.
Yay. It's awesome. Make sure you join the Security Weekly mailing list. Visit securityweekly.com/subscribe. Click the button to join the list. We're going to roll out our public Discord channel, which has been going very, very well. John also has a Discord channel for Black Hills Information Security. You should be in both of those, really, and attend both of our webcasts. You can subscribe to our webcasts on our website and virtual trainings. Actually, John and I were just talking about some potential topics for upcoming for both of our respective webcast series, and you should have a lot of good things to look forward to. With Core Security this Thursday actually is going to be awesome. Our webcast coming up, securityweekly.com/webcasts. It's really cool little demo. Matt, I don't know if you looked at my slides yet for this. Core, of course, is going to have their own demo, more Active Directory kind of focused. My demo is I took WordPress and database server and containers that were running on Linux, and I basically show you how you can compromise everything and get root on everything, including the underlying Linux host, which is really cool. I mean, certain sets of conditions have to exist, right? And I cherry-picked certain vulnerabilities to be able to do that. But it also, both demonstrations will underscore how you have to prioritize vulnerabilities, exploit vulnerabilities to truly understand how they work. So make sure you tune into that webcast.
Sounds amazing.
Right? It's cool stuff.
This is what happens when you give Paul time to actually work on some of this technical content and research. He just loves it because now it comes into all of our webcasts and virtual training.
Well, because you'd think sometimes you look at like a file upload, like I tried to pick like weirder vulnerabilities that had lower CVSS scores, and I'm like, well, that had that score of 7.5, right? But I can also dump the configuration of your WordPress in plain text, which gives me database credentials, and then, we go from there. I won't spoil it, but and so I think that our perception of how critical a vulnerability is, it can be really, really warped unless you're going in and doing some kind of pen testing, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I'm demonstrating. John, do you do a lot of web app pen testing?
Yes.
Yourself?
Yes. No, me? God, no. I do nothing but PowerPoint meetings.
Oh, okay.
I don't do anything fun anymore. I was just sitting here complaining inside my head. Matt's like, Paul gets to do fun things. I'm like, I'd like to do fun things.
I find that
would be cool.
Burp is an awesome product. I don't know if your testers are using Burp for their web app tests.
Almost exclusively.
The automated scanner, though, you got to really validate the results, is what I found.
Well, okay, so whenever you're dealing with vulnerability assessment scanners in web, they have it's a seesaw. You either have false positives or you have false negatives.
Yep.
And what Burp does is it very much leans towards false positives. And I know some people are like, well, false positives bad. No, it's good. Because false negatives are far, far worse.
Yes.
So that's one of the things we absolutely love about Burp. And then the ability to actually click on the response and see the data and see exactly what it thinks is the indication of that vulnerability is just money.
And Tyler's going to laugh when he hears this, but I'm like, I found DOM-based cross-site scripting. And I was like, oh, no, wait. I had to go read a bunch of documentation. Fortunately, I've done some development. So me skimming through documentation, I'm like, oh, okay, now I get it. And I'm like, oh, that only happens on successful login. And it's only limited to one page because it was like a jQuery, DOM-based. But the amount of research I had to do to get to that conclusion, even though it was a false positive, like you said, John, an error, it actually says that in Burp says that. I want to knock the product, right? It says this is likely a false positive, but you should investigate. The investigation, I learned so much. So it was win-win.
Yeah. And then the plugins capability is amazing too.
Yep.
So.
Some news stories this week. Those are just some tips for web app testers out there. Fortinet launches a new enterprise network firewall. I think this is a little. I don't.
Do we care?
What I really love to see, though, I see now what this article should say is an enterprise network firewall that you can send to every single one of your employees that are working from home, right?
Yes.
That's what I would like to see.
So, but this is also kind of funny. Do you guys remember back in the day where you would get the Cisco appliance and it was this box that you spent $12, $13, $15, $100,000 on, and then you'd look at the it would be the CPU would be a Celeron CPU. It would have 2 gigs of memory and a really anemic hard drive. And one of the things we'd always do is be yeah, this crap ain't gonna cut it. And then we'd go through and upgrade all the components and then get a much better box. It's always interesting how a lot of these appliances are incredibly underpowered and they work right up into the point that the entire planet starts working from home. All of a sudden we need devices that can actually scale properly.
Yep, little late.
It's just they've made a couple of announcements like that, and I think Fortinet has great technology. They certainly have a set of patents that is amazing and brilliant engineers. They are very well poised to make a nice pivot to, like I said earlier, actually protecting people working from home. I know Joff has done a webcast. We'll probably do one as well, right, to talk about how you secure things. And I mean, it's back to basic networking, right? And segmentation and that kind of stuff.
But I think that they also go a little bit further. I mean, if you look at Fortinet, they have the small and medium-sized business market locked up specifically because of MSPs and MSSPs. If you're a small MSP or a small regional one, you're in a small town like Rapid City, South Dakota, almost all of our MSPs are running Fortinet products just because they're inexpensive, they work, they have all the technical capabilities, bells and whistles that you need. So that's one of the things I really like about Fortinet. Yeah,
I wished helping someone with PCI compliance, a retailer, and I don't want them to have to spend money because retailers are hurting right now, obviously. And having something like a Fortinet firewall would absolutely solve the problem to be PCI compliant because you can segment really easily. So, agreed. Let's see. GitHub Code Scanning, aims to prevent vulnerabilities in open source software. Now, I thought it was already doing this. Is it adding more? Is that what the article is saying?
I think it's the 2 security features, the specific capability for open and private repositories. And I think that the super secret Squirrel scanning is what they've added in, because you don't want necessarily all of your code that's public to basically be like, okay, attackers, right here is the vulnerability. They're using getS.
Right.
You need to attack this right now. I think that some people like that, but they don't necessarily want their dirty laundry aired to absolutely everybody. But this is amazing, though. I mean, think about all of the companies that do code scanning, static code analysis. I would be concerned if I was those companies, because with GitHub doing this for free, they're not going to be as good as a full commercial product, nowhere like near, but you're probably talking 80%. And for a lot of companies, that's all they can afford, and it really gets them in the ballpark of being a better product moving forward. So this is really cool.
I agree, John. Awesome. I think if you have a smaller development shop with smaller projects, this is probably more than, probably awesome for you, right? Mm-hmm. Is when you start getting into much more, many more developers with many more lines of code, those optimizations you get in that 20% of features like make the world of difference, right? Because then I've seen commercial products that are like, oh, you've got an older version of Tomcat. By the way, you can update to the latest major branch, and we can test and model that out for you and tell you all the points in code that it's going to hit. And then we can update to the next major version, the latest release. So go from version, hopefully you're not on version 4, but let's say you want to go to, I think version 8 is the latest one, right? Obviously, that's going to touch a lot more pieces of code potentially. It basically can model all that out for you and give you a development path. And I'm like, that's what enterprises need. And that's some of the features I've seen that are really handy for enterprises.
And that's the difference between casual coding shops and the shops that are doing this professionally.
Yep.
Like if you're just running code and you're creating things specifically for your organization, it'd be nice to be able to have that level of insight into your products. But if you're writing software and you're sharing software with people and selling software, you're almost completely incompetent if you're not using a commercial enterprise code scanner.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed.
The other thing that's in this announcement is an update to their secret scanning, Paul. It's called token scanning, but obviously looking for secrets that are embedded in your code, not only on the public side, but now on the private repository side too. So again, kind of the conversations we've had with PPWorks, right?
Is you're going to get a bunch of alerts now. Yeah,
exactly.
You can do things to hide it, though. To go back to my WordPress example, the way that I've configured other PHP applications is if it can read from environment variables, if an attacker can dump your config, they don't get to see the passwords. And it actually protects against specific vulnerabilities that would allow file reading, right? Obviously, if I have shell, I can read the environment variables, right? All bets are off. But if it's just, the ability to read files through a web application, there is some protection there. I was literally patting myself on the back when I was explaining that to John here yesterday. I was like, I said, every little bit counts. It's good.
Yep. Every little bit counts.
YubiEnterprise delivery, allowing organizations to ship YubiKeys to remote workforces. Which
there's a valid use case.
I thought you could do that already, right? They did that already. You could. I think they would ship it to your employees if you had an enterprise. Is the way I understood it when it was a long time ago. We did a briefing, but they did have enterprise support and could send it. Maybe they've kind of beefed that up, given that everyone's working from home, right?
It could also be a marketing push, just because they do something, it may not be that a lot of their customers or prospective customers know that they do it. So they're kind of banging that gong a little bit, which is fine. I think that's perfectly cool.
Now, I use the YubiKey solution. Do you, John, or
what's that?
Are you using the YubiKey second factor?
I did for a while, but then I'm jumping between computers so fast that it was becoming a huge pain in the ass, mainly because I'm an idiot. And I would leave my YubiKey behind. So now I'm using Google two-factor authentication. I know the YubiKey is better. I know that I'm going to get some hate mail for it, but it's just kind of where I had to go with me jumping. Like in this room, I have like 6 computers that I'm using. So it made it a little bit more difficult.
I find for desktops in my office, I think the risk model for me is I can leave one of the YubiKeys plugged into it at all times. Because if someone has physical access to my machine, especially the people that we know that might target someone like that, it doesn't really matter, right? Like it just doesn't matter. Like all bets are off.
And then that gets into a whole nother question. And this is, by the way, this is a source of contention in the company. There's a bunch of people that are like, sure, the owner of Black Hills Information Security doesn't do this, but how come he's making the rest of us do it? And that's horrible, and I know that that's bad. But a lot of our research has been specifically bypassing U2FA. And when I'm looking at it, the type of attack scenario of a spear phishing attack, it's not going to stop those types of attacks if you actually do the attack properly, which once again is one of the reasons why we're trying to get off Google Apps and move over to Office 365 because they have tighter security for U2FA as well.
Right.
So the real meat in the story, just so you guys know, is the last paragraph. For a limited time only, qualifying Yubico customers that purchase a 3-year YubiEnterprise subscription with prepayment before June 26, 2020 will be eligible for free YubiEnterprise delivery services within the U.S. and Canada until September 30, 2020. They're using it as a way to bring in some cash flow and deduct from this. So that's the offer. So that's where the meat is.
Yeah, somebody's trying to hit their quota.
Yeah, it does provide a level, I think, of secure. Although it does. I use it in conjunction with LastPass, but the copy paste buffer in LastPass is the thing that really worries me. And I think YubiKey would help with some of those attacks. No.
Like I said, it depends on the specific type of attack that you're dealing with. As I mentioned, the research that Mike Felch did a while ago, whenever you're setting up a two-factor capture portal and you talk to Google, what the two-factor capture portal does is it goes to Google and says, "Hi, I'm an iPad." And Google's like, "Well, you can't run a YubiKey. I'm going to completely shut off U2FA for you because you're adorable." So whenever you're bypassing U2FA, it's basically that proxy system is mimicking a system that does not support U2FA. Now, you can shut that off and make it stringent, but then it also makes it very difficult for people like executives to literally access their email with an iPad. So it's that whole usability versus security dilemma that you're fighting.
Right. Agreed. Yeah, not everyone. I mean, I have Android and Linux, and so I have NFC or USB-C or USB, on all my devices, and it works with YubiKey. So, but I'm in an anomaly is an understatement, right? Amazon Web Services, Amazon GuardDuty. But I'm not familiar with GuardDuty. So Recorded Future is now supporting GuardDuty, which is threat detection services that continuously monitors for malicious activity and unauthorized behaviors to protect AWS accounts and workloads. So that was kind of interesting. I had not heard of GuardDuty before in Amazon.
No.
Had you?
No,
yeah, I have, because
came across it yet.
GuardDuty comes in on some of the application security side stuff, I believe. So it's integrating some of those capabilities in. It was something I remember dealing with when we were at Layered Insight, but I don't remember the exact context.
I still come back to this whole cloud security thing. We're screwed. Bo was working on his class, the cloud pen testing class, and there was a book, I think I may have mentioned this last week. It's an Azure pen testing book, and it came out late last year, and literally everything in that book is now out of date. So I don't know how these companies keep up. I just don't.
And I was looking at another article that I thought I put in here where someone was like all in on using Kubernetes in AWS.
That was Greenlight in the StackRox announcement, I think.
Yeah. So Greenlight Banks has adopted Amazon EKS, and this announcement is to add StackRox in to protect their EKS instance using StackRox on Amazon's cloud.
And then Portshift also announced extended Kubernetes cluster protection support. So you're going to see a lot of this coming out, right? As people are looking to adopt cloud, they're looking at Kubernetes. You're also going to see a lot of product announcements and a lot of security vendors going after Kubernetes protection. StackRox kind of shifted away from general container security, more focused on Kubernetes. Then you've got Portshift, Soluble. There's a ton of other startups in this space that are all going after the Kubernetes protection stuff.
What I love about Kubernetes is it gives us more attack surface to work with. Basically, what it boils down to.
But that also, this is one of those areas I keep bringing up. With all of our tests, a lot of these technologies just aren't factoring yet, and that's one of the things I thought was great with Matt. Giving that presentation on what would the full security stack look like, and I just don't see a lot of people adopting it at a rate that they should.
And when I looked at EKS, a lot of the comments were, you can run Kubernetes, but it doesn't integrate with a lot of other Amazon services. And obviously it makes some good business sense for others. Like for us, I was like, that doesn't make good business sense because I want to build on a lot of other Amazon services and rely on security within AWS and other things that I can add on. Now here you can add on to EKS, but it's not as integrated, which is interesting. Maybe it's more integrated than it was when I last looked at it, but that was
Amazon ECS being its own custom container service is more integrated with the rest of the Amazon services.
And a lot of enterprises are using ECS too. I mean, they're just not talking. They're just not talking about it. I mean, go try and find, an enterprise. It's like, here's how you configure it securely, right? Like no one is talking about that.
No.
Yeah. EKS evolved when Kubernetes kind of became the de facto orchestrator. And Amazon realized that people that were going to start deploying Kubernetes on-prem were eventually going to look for a service, right? And so EKS evolved, but still not as mature, has not traditionally been as mature as the ECS capabilities. My guess is they're improving that every single day, Paul. It's just we don't necessarily see it in what we're doing.
And I've started reading up on Kubernetes. One of the things I've noticed is a lot of some of the security aspects carry over from containers, right? So it's all about how you configure your containers, which is one kind of layer of security, right? And then there's very specific Kubernetes stuff, but a lot of the fundamentals are still there. How you basically build and manage your containers and registries.
Yep. We hit app. Can we talk the CyberArk acquisition? That one broke this morning. I thought this was really interesting, by the way. So CyberArk, the announcement came across this morning that they bought Idaptive, which is interesting, right? I've been talking about this. I don't think you can be a PAM and just a PAM, right? And so they go out and they buy Idaptive, which now gives them single sign-on, multi-factor, and identity lifecycle management, right? So now you're starting to see the identity players realize there's a holistic identity platform here that has to continue to be built out. I think this is a really interesting evolution in the identity space. And this is where what I think we'll continue to see evolve is these identity players, whether they're privileged access or identity, starting to bring multiple capabilities together in a single platform.
And correct me if I'm wrong, Matt, but CyberArk had been integrating with Idaptive for a while. Like this isn't just like now magically this tool is going to work. I know some of their customers have been basically integrating CyberArk and Adaptive. Is that what you've been hearing too?
Yeah,
like they'd already been working together and partnering for a while.
Yeah, there was already an integration. I mean, if you think about strategic acquisitions, you look to your partners that you integrate well with, right? In this case, this made a lot of sense. But it also strategically makes a ton of sense to me because we had CyberArk actually on Application Security Weekly on Monday talking about secrets and some of the stuff that the Conjura acquisition and CyberArk have been doing, a bunch of open source tools. Now you're taking the evolution of secrets and privileged access and now adding additional identity capabilities all in a single platform instead of having multiple vendors. I've been saying this for how many years now? I think this is a great idea.
Sorry, just sipping my coffee. Code Climate announced an $8.5 million Series B, expanding their engineering intelligence platform for software development. Varonis.
So these are interesting. So the reason I put these in there is we talk about this every once in a while, Paul. What's the difference between an A and a B and a debt and an equity and all this other stuff? Yeah. Here you have two public companies, Varonis and Cloudflare, offering these senior convertible notes. So what's a senior convertible note? Convertible notes are used, anybody who's been in the startup world knows, seed investors will use convertible notes to give cash to eventually get equity. Senior convertible notes are very similar in that you're providing money to get a conversion into stock later, but public stock. But a senior note has some very interesting protections when it comes to, if the company goes into bankruptcy or something like that from a credit perspective. And what I find very interesting here is you've got two public companies trying to raise additional money. But if I look at the terms, if I'm an investor, I'm like 0.75 and 1.25%. I'm like, I can get better returns in my bank account. I kid you not. Well, my one bank account returns 1.5%. Okay, so why would I put risk in a stock when I can make 1.5% in my bank account? I'm just saying, right? But they're using these vehicles to raise some money. And I think it's interesting because when I look at both of these companies, and they are in my Security Weekly 25 index, both of them have negative earnings, which means they're burning cash. So is this, to protect them from some cash burn during this environment? You could use the money for maybe some acquisitions. So it'll be interesting to see, do Varonis and or Cloudflare do some acquisitions with this money? I just find it very interesting of how some of these IPO companies are now needing to do some debt financing.
Interesting.
Yeah, I had no idea about that side of the thing.
I didn't either. That's why we rely on Matt for those.
Yeah, we kind of need him for that for sure.
A little more information about Palo Alto Networks Cortex. This is the XSOAR, which they say is formerly Demisto. So it looks now when I look at this announcement, I kind of imagine, and I don't want to compare, but kind of the way Rapid7 is doing it, right? They've got the Insight platform, and then they've got various modules that you can purchase, and there's integrations between all of those modules. So in Rapid7's case, right, you can get Metasploit Pro, you can get Insight VM, which is essentially Nexpose, and you can get some of their other pieces, web app scanning, right, the log management, the whole thing, and like building blocks, right? But the platform is Insight. It sounds like Cortex is very similar in Palo Alto's case, right? And in both cases, they're pulling in their various acquisitions to solve very specific problems. So in the SOAR aspect, that's Demisto, because that's who Palo Alto bought. I would imagine other Palo Alto Networks acquisitions are probably other building blocks that hopefully, the more interesting part is how they integrate together, right? Like our first question for Rapid7 was, okay, how do I scan, exploit it with Metasploit, and put that off to a patch management system and complete the loop? And they're like, oh yeah, we have all those integrations and the building blocks fit together, right? What I want to hear from Palo Alto is, what are all your building blocks and how do they fit together, right?
Yeah, because I think the Sectu acquisition also fits into Cortex too, somewhere. But where? I don't know where it fits.
Yeah.
John, are you seeing any deployments of Cortex out there?
Yes, actually, Palo Alto really pushes that very hard, and they probably should.
Yep.
One of the things that I have is a problem with the Palo Alto, and it's not really that big of a problem, is it doesn't seem like the Palo Alto, like it's very difficult to kind of piecemeal out the different components of Palo Alto. It really seems like it's not as powerful as it can be or should be unless you have them all together.
Right.
Which, once again, it's not a bad thing. It's just I really wish that a lot of these vendors would just say, well, here's the total package, and that's it, rather than trying to piecemeal and roll it out.
Yeah, you got to be all in with some of these vendors, right? Any other stories that we wanted to cover?
There's the Aruba, FinTech.
Advanced Enterprise Cyber Attack Protection.
Oh, the one that I liked was ServiceNow.
Oh.
I was waiting for ServiceNow to finally start opening up and get a little bit more in the trenches, talking about people working from home and how they're actually incorporating security and remote management for all of these different systems. And I think ServiceNow has always had that type of capability, but I really like the fact that the statement that came out with is like, no, really, we can actually help you, because the biggest problem that we're facing in information security right now today is that we had all of these workstations that were protected by a DMZ and a firewall. They're on the inside of the network are now scattered all over the place. And ServiceNow talking about how they can incorporate and actually work in this new environment, I think is absolutely key. I wish they would have talked about it a little bit more, but no, I'm glad that they finally did start discussing it, because we do have customers that are using ServiceNow, and those remote systems are actually being looked at and monitored. And I just thought this was a good article.
Yeah, and they just acquired Facility to add some additional workplace facility management into the product. Not really focused from a security perspective per se. I think it's more part of the rest of the suite, but they're definitely making some moves in this environment.
Sweet. That will round out the news for this week. Thank you, gentlemen. With that, take a short break, come back and talk about Qualys VMDR with one of their customers from their perspective. So stay tuned.